for me. All right, we are episode 56 of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and I'm also its creator. So, just a little bit of a backstory. So, back when I was younger, I was actually introduced to Star Wars at around 2010. I got fascinated in the film industry then, and I actually have a diploma in communication. However, well, in a country whereby you are only recognized as in the entertainment industry by either singing or acting, well, it was not an easy competition, I guess, and it was not a very direct path, a direct visible path. So, as a result, at that time, of course, I need to put some aspiration on it on the back foot, and I continue with a degree in business. So, this particular gentleman actually did accomplish that particular dream. Okay, so he is a third culture kid who grew up in four different countries growing up. And after graduating from Emerson College in Boston, he returned back to Malaysia, which is one of the places that he grew up in. So he is the director of Cuak, which was nominated as Best Non-Malay Film at the 27th Film Festival in Malaysia. And he has also worked in Train Station, which went on to win multiple awards at film festival, both in domestic in Malaysia and in the United States. So recently, he is the director. His first foray into directing as as a director. Sorry, in the movie Shadowplay, which is based on his own experience as a third culture kid. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce Mr. Tony Pietra Arjuna. So hi Tony, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Calvin, and hello, everybody.
All right. Okay, so let's just jump into the very first question. Okay, Tony, I am really, really sorry, but the very first question will somehow make every single one of my guys hit, and that is, well,
Oh,
the definition of home, and also for your case, is it more to the location itself or the people?
oh yeah. Looking back, I think at the end of the day, it's really about the people, I suppose. Because as you know, having experienced life as a TCK, um, you get planted to a certain place based on more on sentimental connections rather than physical connections. Although I mean, physical connections represent locations and haunts and whatnot, but still, what makes them come alive, what makes them sentimental, are the people that you share it with. So I think um, over time, moving has become not really an issue because home is where the stereotypically where the heart is. So I mean, for example, like when I was in Boston, Boston basically became home to me. Even though my parents and my family were in Jakarta at the time, this was in the late '90s. Um, but as a college student, my experiences were shaped by the people around me, my friends, who essentially were responsible for the best years of my life as a young person. So um, funny enough, when I went back to Jakarta or KL around that time during summer holidays or whatnot, I pined for Boston. It felt like home. So really, it's where you end up for a particular period of time, and then just get used to a new one. But I've been in Malaysia for like almost 20 years already, so I guess this is actually home now.
Sorry. This is a little bit of a question, but are you a Boston Celtics fan?
Um, yeah, I suppose
That's right.
here's the giveaway here. I was
Uh,
never really a fan,
okay.
although
Yeah,
but yeah, I just because I was there, I would root for the Celtics, so that goes without saying.
crap. Yeah,
Maybe
I'm a
the team
Lakers.
would have
I'm
been
a
out of
Lakers fan. Sorry.
in no time. They would have been kicked out of Dodge in no time.
All right. All right. Okay. So in in the previous 55 episodes, I noticed that TCK tend to lean towards a career which is like more mission driven, artistic pursuit, and entrepreneurship. And even then, I've had individuals who are biologists. I've had somebody who created a cookbook of a variation of omelette boller, a Swedish dessert that is done in the styles of the countries that she has lived in. I've had 4 TEDx speakers on my show. And the thing is that even then, in with growing up in an Asian culture, you are somebody who ended up now doing as an up and coming director in the movie industry. So this is, in fact, it's something that is definitely not easy, even if you are a non-TCK. So what draws you to a career in the movie industry? And also, why at Malaysia, in fact, which might, it's an up and coming in an up and coming market. However, the thing is that even in compared to like Hollywood or even the Hong Kong movie industry, it's completely segregated. There's still a fractionalized area of it. So yeah, Tony.
Yeah. Okay. The first part. Okay. Why I got into the movie career? You know, it's simple. I grew up as a movie buff. I was just roped into it at a very young age. You know, because I think first exposure was like I'm Gen X. You know, I was born in 1977, so obviously Star Wars was responsible for that. You know, because I was born and raised right smack in the middle of the whole initial trilogy. So that shaped my perspective on storytelling, on how I like to fantasize a lot. I like to daydream. So
Thank God I was introduced to Star Wars is by Revenge of the Sith. If I had watched by Phantom Menace, I would not have liked it at all.
Thank God for that. So
okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. I agree with that. So, you know, but just I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I came from a family of creative people. You know, my father, who was Indonesian, was a musician. You know, my mom was in advertising. So so I guess that was in my DNA to just pursue something creative. And in my case, because I like to daydream, it just made sense. It's you know, one day I just want to make my what's going on in my head into celluloid, into films. So that brought me to where I am today. You know, it's been both a good and bad decision from time to time, depending on which juncture in your life you're at. But then coming to the second question, why Malaysia? Okay, so that was not really by intent initially. You know, as usual, there's always a bit of drama around behind these stories. But in my initial idea was to stay on in the States and pursue my career there. You know, as challenging as it was, you know, but you know, coming out of film school, you know, there were some networks that I could have gotten into and see where I've taken me. But what happened was my stepdad, who's been raising me since I was 5, passed away. So thank you. 20 years ago. So I decided to just you know, out of personal choice, I preferred to be with my family, my mom and my sis at the time. You know, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because on one hand, especially back then, it would have been a lot harder to get into the stateside film industry. You know, it's like at least at the time, you know, like if you were a film grad, you know, like, you know, only the ratio is like only 1 out of 50 would actually make it into the film business, because it's so competitive and big over there. And everyone else just end up pursuing something else altogether to get sidetracked and pursue some other career. In which case, you know, Malaysia was a fledgling industry, you know, so it's like, so it was easy for me to get started. You know, I started in post production in commercials. So so at least that was sustainable for a time, but it took me quite a while to get into the directing line. That's something that you had to earn over the course of time. But right now, with technology becoming so accessible to younger people, it's almost like, oh, you know, pretty much anybody could get started, you know, as long as they have their own YouTube channel, you know, and they know how to market themselves. So I wish I had those tools back then.
Yeah, it's pretty true actually. And even now in YouTube, they can monetize it. So as a result, they became content creators.
Yeah. But yeah, sorry. One part I forgot to answer was, you know, even though Malaysia, but I mean, fast forward now, it's like Yeah, still, and even now it's still a fledgling industry, because obviously Indonesia has really broken into the world market, thanks to some recent films, whether it's Joko Anwar, or Raid, or everything else in between. Malaysia is still trying to make a play for that, but I think we're at a juncture where we could eventually make it happen at some point, to some degree. So I think. It feels kind of gratifying to be in a pioneering kind of phase of the industry. So it's like me and my cohorts and my colleagues like to think that we're kind of like the sacrificial lambs, kind of like of getting something happening on the long run. So we'll see how that goes. But having said that, I do have intentions and plans to eventually make my way elsewhere, outside. Because Malaysian films are, for the most part, they're very insular. At least the mass market ones, the mainstream ones, are mass marketed for the domestic demographic, so they don't really travel. But what's happening is like things like Pinewood Iskandar, formerly known as Pinewood Iskandar, and other production platforms here are trying to turn Malaysia into an international filmmaking hub, or at least a regional filmmaking hub. So that's where I'm targeting, more in terms of making films out of Malaysia, but not necessarily for Malaysian audiences, but more for a global audience. The TCK mindset basically at play. There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback a bit on that. So with respect to Shadowplay, I actually already watched it twice by now. So
okay.
Yeah, because I need to. Well, if I invite you to the show, there's no way I don't know about your movie, right, Mark?
Okay.
There's an influence from there's an influence from an old 1986 movie called Blue Velvet, right? I see the same tonality as it, and I believe in one you mentioned that Never Ending Story is a big influence of you in you as a child. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
So the movie itself, okay, I don't want to give people spoiler, so please check it out after this. But for that, actually, I need to ask, because the main central theme of the movie is on identity, right? So do you feel that this is something that is universally that would be applicable to TCKs, not only in Malaysia but also outside of Malaysia?
At least from my personal perspective, I don't know if I would be speaking for all TCKs, because I was drawing from my own personal experiences. So I think what I would say is, I wouldn't say I think it would apply to all TCKs, but I would say that perhaps it would. Because as you know, since you've watched the film twice, the film is very cryptic, and symbolic. Intentionally, a lot of things were open-ended for interpretation. So I would say that would fall into one of the open interpretations as well. But I'm geared to say maybe it could apply to all of us, to some in varying degrees, depending on your own personal experiences.
Right. Yeah. How do you think though the movie has fared so far? Like I mentioned, it's because currently in Malaysia, while the movie industry is still up and coming, I mean you are one of the pioneering batch of it. It is still a highly fragmented demographics, like unlike in maybe in Bollywood, even though it is a little fragmented. But the thing is that the Hindi movies is actually like the main market area, and the thing is that there are still other areas to enter. So how do you feel Shadowplay so far has been faring in the Malaysian movie scene?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to backtrack a bit. Initially when I said, at a pioneering stage, I think I was talking more in terms of indie filmmakers. Obviously, those. Yeah. I mean, I do work within the studio system from time to time, but for the most part, we're trying to cut our own path and open up new audiences and new markets. Shadowplay has been tricky because technically it hasn't even been released in Malaysia yet. Technically speaking. The current digital and VOD platforms that it's released on are actually North American. So it's I would say that it's one of the few Malaysian-made films to actually have North American distribution. before an official local release. And we're still trying to find ways to get it released locally, but that's been tough because over here, as you said, it's fragmented. It's hard to position it for the main Malay speaking demographic, which is what everybody wants to focus on, obviously to make returns. So trying to get it into theaters has been nearly impossible, especially now. It's like, with the pandemic, that's dead, So our only option right now is our streaming services, regional streaming services, like for example, Mubi, iFlix, or Netflix. So hopefully, if we can get that on one of those more of those platforms, that's where it would find its audience locally and regionally. And in terms of how it's faring here, it hasn't even technically performed yet. Although I don't know if I should mention this, but it's been doing quite well in the torrents.
I contributed.
What you torrented?
Shame
on you! Shame on you!
What? I can't watch it. Okay. Moving on.
What is Vimeo even blocked? Yeah, that's the other problem because of North American. Because of the North American platforms, it might be region blocked around here. So, which is why our next best bet is try to get it on a streaming, a more local or regional streaming platform. So, yeah.
Okay. There is I've heard of a saying that there's a difference in mindsets, like between athletes and within those in the media industry. In that, or your case is that you cannot show the pain and struggle that you actually experience, because if an athlete, like if let's say in a commercial, you see them being drenched in sweat, then after that, when they see their workout video, it's something that is truly motivational, right? But within the world of a silver screen, you can't show this kind of presentation. You as a director, you always need to show a proper professional artistic image. But the thing is there's definitely a lot of struggle with it. So what do you feel so far in your career is that has been the main struggle, both maybe in the business side and the artistic side?
Okay. I'll start with the business side first. So I think to begin with, trying to get myself established as a director here, it took me quite a while. I started off as an editor.
Yeah.
So that was my initial bread and butter, but eventually I just got sick of it and decided that, I think I want to try my hand at doing what I set out to do in the first place, was just to make films. So that was a struggle initially because on one hand, getting attached to a company was a bit how should I put it? At least at the time, I wasn't willing to adapt to the system, So I chose to freelance. Yeah.
Common for TCK.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Everyone of us got that. Everyone of us got that.
Exactly. So career-wise, that wasn't very wise because I found myself financially unstable. But from time to time, I would, there would be, of course, you get your good runs, and then you have your dry spells. And during your dry spells, you just have to make sure that you saved up enough to go through that dry spell. But eventually, I hit my stride a few years back, with more long form work and features. So I'm finally getting the attention of the people who matter most in the industry. So there's a chance down the line, and hopefully sooner than later, to actually make this a more stable trade for myself. Provided that this pandemic issue becomes mitigated or managed within the year. Otherwise, things look fairly grim for production. Everywhere right now at the moment. Unless things change. So business side, I would say that it's been a bit of a juggle between, a ping pong between being stable and being hungry. But I thought of it long term, and it was important to me that I establish myself on my own terms so that I could call my own shots down the line. So I guess there's a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit that you mentioned that a lot of TCKs have. They just want to cut their own path. But artistic side has been challenging as well because, especially in Malaysia, it's fairly limited. You have to kind of like pander or cater to the general audiences. And if you kind of like do something that's off the track and against the grain, no, either people won't pay attention, or nobody will fund you, or nobody will want to hire you. So even that I had to strike a balance. So in between, I had to do a lot of not a lot, but a fair number of things that I hated doing. Just to make a buck. But I'm thankful for that. Because in the process, I became a better filmmaker. So I think it's important for any artist or especially filmmakers to go through a period of doing things they don't like, for the sake of doing what they like on the long run. So yeah, so it's been it continues to be a balancing act, but I'd like to see myself within the next few years being able to kind of like call the shots for the most part, once I found my footing, once I've established my footing and some clout as well in the industry. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So yeah, I think one of the main message we can get is to do what you have to do in order to fight for what you love. Right? I think that is something that we all have to learn because I think so. Recently, I was consulting a recent podcaster. The thing was because her first video has 0 viewers for at least around 2 weeks. So she was really demoralized by that, and she put it in our group chat. So I actually showed her my very, very first ever production. And at that time firstly, is because I was using a really crappy laptop. So it was dark. It was completely dark. And myself and my guest at that time, both of us had tan skin. So it is just a buzzing noises in the darkness.
Right.
And at that time was that I received a lot of negative feedback at that time because people were put off by the quality. So, and well, I survived until 56 episodes, but I continue to go. So I think that is something that it's a learning lesson, I guess. I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to improve on it. So I really can resonate with what you said on that.
It's all part of your journey, and it's necessary as well, So, and when you look back at it, and when we look back at it, it's like we'll be thankful for it.
Indeed.
So, yeah.
Okay. So, I want to get back a little bit on your life as a TCK. So, what do you feel has been the ultimate blessing as a TCK, and at the same time, right? Have you ever experienced, people like to call it a failure, but on my show, we like to use the term learning opportunity as a result of cultural differences?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, actually, learning opportunity as opposed to failure. That's actually my life philosophy as well. But on the first question, biggest blessing, obviously, it's just the way you look at the world and interact with the world and with everybody. You're not judgmental for the most part. You're not guided by prejudices, and I think what you're more guided by is more by intuition. Because you basically look at places and people on their own merits, and on their own qualities, and for the most part, that makes you look at life, despite all the struggles that you go through, and despite difficulties from time to time, and there's been quite a few, and it's still ongoing. It generally gives you a more positive outlook on how to navigate through life as well, because I think what it boils down to is, as TCKs, you have to adapt. So so adaptability is probably like one of the things that I'm thankful for, as somebody who grew up being designated a TCK. So and that kind of like permeates into other aspects of life as well. So I would, yeah. So adaptability is what I'm thankful for.
All right.
And then this, what was the second part of the question again?
Maybe a notable learning opportunity, that something that carries you over for your life, I think.
All right. I wish I took my French classes more seriously.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
French. When I was in international school, it was a requirement for everybody to go through to learn a foreign language. It was either Spanish or French.
Okay.
Yeah. So I chose French because French sounds cool, and all that, But I was lazy. I didn't take it seriously. I kept flunking all the classes. If I took it seriously, I could probably be working in France right now, making French films. Because I love French cinema. So,
All right.
so I'll use that as an example. I wish I
Do they
learned
have
more
German?
language. Sorry.
Do they have German? Do they have German? The German's dubbing
Yeah.
industry is big.
Yeah. It's true. Funny enough, I'm working with somebody who actually does dubbing work for German filmmakers, but here in Malaysia, so you're right. It's something to look into. But again, French is an example. It's I had a German stepdad, but I never took the opportunity to actually learn German. So
Yeah.
so I think my biggest learning opportunity or lack thereof was that I should have pursued more languages.
All right.
I think that's my biggest regret, actually. And I think I feel ashamed as a TCK to not have done that.
Yeah, you still can speak Bahasa Melayu. It's fine.
Yeah, I know, and I'm still learning it.
Indonesia too.
But I have to say that it's improved somewhat, because having to interact more with local crew, most of whom, even though they understand English, they don't speak it as much. Then I would have to communicate in DM. So yeah, so that's gotten me more in touch with my inherent Malaysianness, which is kind of like arguable. So, but it's there.
Okay, so as I mentioned with regards to Shadowplay, the thing is because we can see the main theme of, okay, for me, of course, for my interpretation is that
Yeah.
it is looking for identity, right? To me,
Mhm.
this is how I interpret it. A lot of notable directors tend to have a certain theme with regards to their movie. Like, for example, George Lucas tend to value relationship, especially between fathers and sons. Let's see. Tim Burton with the horror thingy, and Scorsese, which is one of my personal favorite director. I think his is more towards portraying an actual cinematic situation based on an actual real events, but done in a way that is entertaining. And also, they tend to want to pay tribute to older cinematography style, because I know one of his
Yeah.
signature style is by doing a trailing shot.
Yeah.
So for your case, right, do
Yeah.
you feel that in your subsequent work you will be using this moving forward with your mindset and perspective as a TCK? Because personally, for me, I've experienced before whereby when I'm having a bad day, it will reflect on my own broadcast. So, do you think that this is going to be a central theme in your upcoming work?
Absolutely. So, and I would say that Shadowplay is essentially a blueprint, a template for all of that. And to be honest, the whole film was really an experiment. I was in the process of finding my own voice. Trying to find out what works for me as in terms of creating a personal stamp or a personal aesthetic. The so-called auteur theory. I know that's pretentious, but I think it's important to establish a kind of a repertoire in your work, so that people can identify you with that work. So yeah, absolutely, because and I think that's why I'm very much fascinated, if not obsessed, with the noir genre, because it involves labyrinthine narratives and essentially about the gray areas between good and evil, but I would apply that to the gray areas of identity.
Yeah.
So and so with Shadowplay, what I tend to do is to reconcile those two personal interests, the noir genre and being intercultural,
Yeah.
and use that as a kind of exploration of how this character, who's a private detective, is essentially trying to discover who he is, from the past that he's forgotten, through this kind of labyrinthine mystery narrative. And it turns out, of course, that it's symbolically a kind of a soul searching as well, a vision quest, so to speak. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I see a lot of this thing being a recurring part of the different segments of the movie. Okay. So this is actually an idea that was said by my previous guest, Nyama Ashok. So he has a concept called 2045, because this is actually a recent favorite question of mine to my upcoming guest. So because this is actually already your job, if you can create a character or even a show which is going to be a big hit on its own right.
Yeah.
So what character would you create to address on pertaining to social issues that's currently happening in the world? So I will let you answer that first.
Okay. So interestingly, I think as Shadowplay pertains, one protagonist that I'm always keen on making a recurring type of protagonist is the detective. So, but I would say that in future films, it would take on a different incarnation. But if I were to create a single character, it would be something like somewhere along the lines of a Raymond Chandler character, like Sam Spade, but if he was a TCK, so so he'd be basically he'd be hired by expats or people planted in different parts of the world, and because he's lived in various parts of the world, he speaks various languages and he knows how to adapt to certain cultures very, very quickly and very easily, And I think one of the things that a lot of TCKs have is that their accents change based on where they are and who they're talking to.
Yeah,
so
even
this
their
character,
personality change. Even their personality change.
Malaysian accent, for example, depending on where he is, So, but as things are going on right now in the States with George Floyd and police brutality, then I think I would have this character, kind of like question his own allegiances as well, as somebody who enforces the law, and to make it more socially relevant and conscientious, he would be like, calling out, others in his trade who he finds are abusing their position, so that's something that's actually quite interesting to me as well, something I would like to explore. Okay.
I actually had two ideas. So one of them was actually what was proposed by my past guest Nyama. So it's a concept called 2045.
Right.
So with how globalization is now is an important part of our world, it's practically how we live, right? So the first one, what he mentioned is that what happened if people adopted the lifestyle of African American in order to see what it's like on the other side. That's for him.
Yeah.
For me, for what you mentioned with regards to the character that you created, what if he had the capability of shape shifting so that he can change to how he looked like when he's at the humidity? So okay. I hope that's something that might influence you somewhere down the road. I would love to see that.
I'm gonna write the synopsis already, and then I'm gonna steal your idea and then claim that it's my own. Just kidding.
I'm live. I have my viewers.
Now make me sign an NDA. Although this is public already. Hopefully nobody else is like, oh, suddenly getting ideas and okay, now I'm gonna. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. It's I like that. I think it's something that we could possibly talk about at some point in the future.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This is something that I see a little bit has been recurring. So because I'm in multiple TCK chat groups here,
Yeah. Yeah.
we once have a topic on racial representation. So recently I created an article to address. At that time when I actually wanted to create the article was because of the rise of the attacks on Chinese and also other Asian citizens due to what is currently going on. Because
Yeah.
well, a certain leader of free world keep calling it
Mhm.
the Chinese virus, and it results in
Mhm.
a lot of unnecessary and platform for
Yeah.
racial. So one of the area that I actually decided to tackle is on racial representation because the thing is that let's say when we talk about maybe a Chinese in a cinema, most of the
Yeah.
time they will excuse them as being representation is by portraying an Asian woman in a skimpy attire as a love interest, and whereas the
Yeah.
men either knows kung fu or somehow we are mathematical nerds.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of ways
Yeah.
this has been done, maybe in through the Latinos based on their own, they're being
Yeah.
objectified, and African
Yeah.
American maybe
Yeah.
being done in in a much in a
Yeah.
less delightful manner, I guess.
Mhm.
So, for what is your definition? What do you feel is something that is practiced in order to do a proper racial representation in a cinema?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, to me, it's basically, um, yeah. This is I just need a moment to think about this one because it's a
Yeah,
great question, and it's very weighted right now. So my point of view has always been okay. Let's put it this way. The fact of the matter is, and as a TCK and obviously somebody who's lived as an expat most of his life,
yeah,
I've been fairly privileged, you know. So I've never had to experience uh, racial discrimination as a minority group, you know. Um, no, at least I haven't experienced it directly, you know. So because I've never been in a position where I had to experience it, you know. Although having lived in the States for a more extended period of time, then I became more aware of it, you know, amongst my American minority friends, you know, and having faced it to some subtle degrees um, on a daily basis from time to time, you know. But I think things will be different if I was there right now, you know, especially with the climate, you know, with how Trump is exacerbating, you know, all this very latent racism towards Asian Americans and other um, ethnic groups as well. You know, so I would probably feel differently then now as opposed to then. You know, but I think the way I've always seen it is, you know, do not regard a particular, do not cast or write a character on account of what he is, but who he is. So I think roles don't have to be race specific.
yeah,
And I think what filmmakers should start doing and casting directors should start doing is, you know, if as long as the roles are not race specific, it's to not have in their mind, oh, you know, it's got to be, a straight white male, you know, in his late 20s, you know, but um, who could act best in this particular role, you know, and you'll be surprised at how, and if you open it up, you know, based on that alone and not be, you know, beholden to the idea that you have this particular physical characteristic to fit this character and just cast on account of how well they play that character, then, I mean, speaking of Asian Americans or Asians in particular, you know, then uh, I'm pretty sure, you know, that there's going to be a lot more of them on screen, and we've been seeing a lot of that happening a lot in network and streaming American TV, for example, you know. So that is changing in terms of the entertainment landscape. And I think as long as that's prevalent in the culture, on the long run, hopefully that can kind of like push back against the casual or daily racism elsewhere. You know, speaking of the United States. Speaking in terms of if we want to talk more in terms of where I am in Malaysia, then that's always been kind of like our guiding principle, because a lot of it has to do over here is obviously language, so I think at least my experiences of working in the local industry on local content, it's been fairly diverse. We don't have just Malays, you have Indians and Chinese as well in equal measure, provided that they speak enough BM, in that particular show. To be cast. So that's always the criteria has always been about language here, right? Rather than it is about your ethnic group. So arguably. So once again, talking in terms of experience, so I think at the end of the day, it's really about merit rather than identity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is also something interesting also to tackle on. And so I recently found if there's a book used to be called Percy Jackson, which is based on the that
Hi, Myra.
yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Tavia Butler. Okay, I have to look at it.
Okay, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. You were saying
recently, Rick Riordan, the creator of Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, has extended his publishing company to actually include artists outside of his own company. So there's one actually called whereby they actually tackle on the Hindu deities as Hindu deity demigods. So this is something that is actually interesting. I guess is because one of the areas I noticed is that within the film industry itself, there's always a need to, of course, appeal to the national demographics. So as a result, it will portray the foreigners is within an antagonistic role. So as a result, this is something that makes people more attuned to watch it, maybe if you want to call it. Is because they want to pander to a certain sense of nationality. But I think what you mentioned is actually true. Is that instead of doing it based on appearance, it's based on firstly capability and suitability. For at least a year now, whenever I'm on YouTube, I've been trying to put Daniel Day-Kim as Namor, the Submariner for Marvel movie. No, not because I actually do like him as an actor, but the reason why I want that is because he kind of looked like Namor. He does look like it.
Yeah.
All right.
Fair enough. Yeah. So yeah. Go on. Yeah.
Now this is actually going to be the last question. So if anything you want to mention on it?
No, it's good. Carry on. Wait, let me look up Octavia Butler first. Just.
I don't even know who is that. I'll look into it after.
I feel ashamed because maybe I'm supposed to know, but Octavia E. Butler.
Sorry about that, Myra. If you be kind enough, maybe you can write the description. Both of us are not aware of that.
Okay, American science fiction author, Nebula Hugo winning award winner. Okay, she's African American. Okay, author of Kindred. Okay, I've heard of Kindred. Okay, all right. Okay, Myra. I'll look that up and get back to you on that.
All right.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Carry
on. This is going to be my final question. Yeah.
All right.
So, okay. So, what books or advice would you give to an aspiring filmmaker, the younger generations of TCK, or somebody a future TCK who want to pursue what you are doing currently?
Okay. Okay, books.
If you don't have books, it's fine. I'm also not a fond reader myself. I actually used to study by using movies. So my father is a movie buff, so he would bring me to cinemas And after the movie end, he will bring me for lunch. Then he will ask me, "What do you actually learn from the movie?"
Actually, I do have a book. Okay, it's not directly related to the question, but I think it's important. I think every young person now, especially now, should read George Orwell's 1984.
Animal Farm?
Sorry?
Is it Animal Farm?
No, 1984.
1984. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, Animal Farm is somewhat related, but I mean, it's the greatest cautionary tale of all time, and we're kind of like living in on the precipice of that becoming a reality everywhere. So it's important for them to read it, and as TCKs, it's important for TCKs to know about it because they have the ability to kind of like transcend the kind of dystopia that that Orwell envisioned in that novel. So. So young TCKs especially should know about it, because it's all about the idea of how nationalism could create totalitarianism. Nationalism is always a gateway to that, and I think global citizens in particular have a responsibility to just push back against that mentality. So I think 1984 should be in everybody's syllabus, and you will see that a lot of the boxes are beginning to tick in terms of how events are shaping ourselves towards that kind of a scenario. But in terms of what I would give in my advice, what advice I would give to other TCKs is, pretty much what I mentioned earlier. Whatever skills or life navigating abilities you've attained or accumulated as while growing up, you can apply that to life on the long run. And I think as I mentioned, that's essentially adaptability. And with adaptability, you can survive anything. Knock on wood, and especially in these trying times right now. And I think you guys, if you're in your 20s, particular, I think you've definitely having it harder than any of us had before. At least we didn't go through a time where we had to question our futures. Because even though we still had to work for it, we still had to fight for it. We always knew that it was always going to be there. And right now, I could see how things look very uncertain, especially in the work and job market. But as long as we Gen Xers are out there, supporting you guys, and then then don't feel completely left out, because the thing is, we need the next generation to carry on. So I think it's our responsibility, Gen Xers. Boomers kind of like had their day already, to kind of like lay the groundwork and help lay the groundwork to make sure that younger millennials and Zoomers have a kind of path forward. So me as a filmmaker, I would say, if projects come along, I will make sure that I would hire, people who are fresh grads, because it's hard for them to go anywhere right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So the responsibility I would take is to ensure that you guys have opportunities. If provided that I can somehow create the channels for that, and then let you guys be on your own way from there. But I like to at least help, to make sure, because we all need each other on the long run. And particularly if you're a TCK, I think especially now more than ever, thanks to the internet, it's important for us to have this global community, this connected presence, so that we know that we're out there for each other, and we could always talk to each other, like we're doing right now. So and hopefully it'll proliferate on the long run, especially now that we're beginning to discover more of each other out there, outside of our outside of our friends.
Community is also growing, actually. So I guess a lot of issue that happen between generational and culture is because there is a lack of communication. Because for one
Right.
thing, like if let's say now we, or maybe when you are 16 nowadays, you tell your parents the issue you are having now, they will tell you, when I was 16, I was already married and
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Which is not a mindset that the current
Yeah.
generation can
Yeah.
actually understand. Because
Right.
the thing is that it's not a competition. For one thing
Mm.
is that yes, there is problem, but every generations have their own issue moving forward. So
Yeah.
uh, I think it's best to actually, for the younger generation, is
Yeah.
to actually hear what the
Mm.
older generation went through,
Yeah.
understand it, but
Mm.
pick up which one that actually works for you.
Exactly.
You don't have to follow exactly what your parents went through,
Right. Right.
because you can't. There's no way that you can adapt to what they went through because you don't
Mm.
know what it is.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
So sorry, was that a question?
Oh, no. Oh, no, no. Sorry, sorry.
No,
No.
yeah. Okay. No, no. I totally relate to that. And it's funny how you realize that you're getting older when you start imparting your experiences to younger people. It's like when I was your age, we didn't have social media. We went outside, and got bruised and and so forth.
Yeah,
But
I did hear about that. In fact, that exact same line. I've heard that exact same line before actually, but I can't remember who said it.
yeah, and it's funny that I end up saying those things. So it's like, oh fuck, age. Sorry.
No,
So I was like, oh, age test. When you start, imparting knowledge. But I think right now it's like we're in a particularly difficult period for younger people. So it's like everything um, uh, that we've been kind of like lecturing younger people initially would seem kind of irrelevant now, because right now they're really going to go through a really hard time. Uh, but I think this is where they could actually um, take pieces of what they've been imparted by, whether it's their parents or grandparents, because they've been, and as you said, they've been through some pretty tumultuous periods in their histories as well. And I think going back to adaptability, it's all about picking out what's functional, and apply it to your present circumstances. And I think resilience is really what matters right now for everybody.
all right.
Um, but on the other hand, I've always been a positive person. So I would like to think, and hopefully I don't jinx everybody by saying this, but I would like to think that we'll get through this eventually, and hopefully maybe even sooner than we hoped. I'd
All
like to
right.
think that at least.
Yeah, that's a positive mind.
Yeah.
And just to add on to what Tony says, I think we also need to be a little bit more understanding.
Mm.
The thing is with that, for those of you who watch this show for the very first time, Global Citizens is a webcast whereby I invited people who has experienced multicultural lifestyle, like Tony and myself. We are both TCKs. So along with that, I've invited expatriates, nomads, and even I've invited international speakers who need to spend time abroad because of the demand of their job. Because the thing is that why I invited such individuals and personalities is because unlike when you visited a country, yes, you are exposed to a new culture on a holiday. But when you have lived in that country, you actually have to adapt to, as what we have been saying throughout this entire conversation, and and as a result, you adapted to their mindset, their perspective, and even how another people of other country would work. So it become a part of you, and also it's because one of the thing is that it's like a piece of your heart is left within that country, so you feel attachment to that. So as a result, any harm that came to it, you feel it in your own heart, and well, you may not be able to adapt as easily, but at the same time, this is something that with adulthood actually makes it easier. So with that, that's all the questions I've had for today. Tony, do you have anything you want to mention? I think you have another upcoming drama that's in work, right? I think it's called Devoted.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Devoted is currently streaming on View Malaysia. It's a streaming platform. I don't think it's region block. I think you might be able to access it in Indonesia or elsewhere in Southeast Asia. So it's and once again, identity has a lot to do with it. In this case, it's about identity politics. About how it's about a cult. Which is essentially a misogynistic cult. Which wants to return to kind of a reactionary way of life, and how these characters kind of like fight against this cult. And yes, and please watch my movie Shadowplay. The most accessible platform is Vimeo on demand. So just go to Vimeo and search for Shadowplay, and you could rent it for just for 20 ringgit, which is about the price of a movie ticket anywhere. So, and at least you don't have to go out to the movies and watch it, and risk yourself to COVID-19. Sorry.
Yeah, you can't really actually go out anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Indonesia. Most of the mall has already opened, but people are still too afraid to go out. Also.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, there you go, and hopefully you guys enjoy the films, and Kelvin, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on this.
You're most welcome. Okay, I also recently created a LinkedIn article. It's called "Why Do We Hate? How Racism Still Persists," and it's on my Facebook page and in my Global Citizens page. Do check it out and do actually reach out to us in case you need. I also attached some of Tony's social media links, including his IMDb and even his Instagram. If you guys are interested to learn a little more, maybe you have a question for him, please reach out to him. But please highlight where you know him from. If it's not my show, it's because this is his personal privacy. So along with that, I need to thank these individuals who left likes. So it's Miss ST, both the Vogel brothers, Jason and Ben. Always love having both of them. Link, go. I'm not sure. I think this may be your context to me. And Kritika, thank you so much. Fuji and Miss Megan Norton, who is from Kaleidoscope. She's actually one of my past guests. And of course, Myra for leaving a heart, and also at the same time for a screenplay idea for Tony.
Okay, all right, Myra. Let's talk about that sometime. All right.
All right. And with that, that's the end of episode 56 of Global Citizens. So thank you so much for those who watch it. And of course, thank you so much, Tony, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, my honor. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Yes. And with that, see you guys.
All right. Bye-bye.